Hello, good morning. Well, another thought for the day. A lot of bloggers out there clearly have I suppose you might call it a bias. Here in the Philippines, foreigners can come and go on what we all know as a tourist visa. And a tourist visa can, in its initial phase, last for as long as 3 years. It's done by, originally you could renew it every 6 months. But now that's been reduced now to every 2 months. Now, I don't know whether that's more financially benefit to the government or not, but that's their wisdom. They've decided to do it. But it's been able to go for 2 months and then renew it. And then you can do that up to 3 years. And then you do what is famously called the visa run. But I think we need to remember that whilst we discuss different visas, that everybody's in a different situation. Many of you out there have married a Filipina. So, of course, you're proud that you've married a Filipina. And with that, of course, you have the ability to come back initially to enter on a bayan visa, I think they call it, which gives you up to a year of entry into the Philippines because you're married to a Filipina. Often people use those to come and visit family members. The Filipina is probably living overseas at the time. So she's coming back to visit family and friends. And it's a great little visa to do that. But then you have, of course, the permanent residency visa, which is, some like to link the two together, but they're definitely separate. Initially, when I first came here, you could get a SRRV visa, which was really designed for people who wanted to make the Philippines their home permanently. And to demonstrate that, and to, I suppose, assist them in that ability, giving them a little bit more, a false sense of security, really, because you pay a bond. You pay a bond to the government. And at the time, it was 10,000 US dollars, 500,000 pesos. And with that, of course, there's fees attached to it. It's not just the 10,000 US dollars put in a bank account uh, for a purpose of being a bond. That's what it is. I tend to think it's more like buying a visa, buying the right to stay. And I have no problem with that. If you have the money to do that, that's great. But there are sub-clauses to that, and that is the one that got me into trouble with a lot of Americans, pointing out that if you had a military background, which a lot of Americans, I won't say all, but a lot do, and the privilege of having that offered to them was misconstrued that somehow I was bashing Americans. After all, military doesn't always mean American. It can mean German, it can mean Australian, Kiwi, or English. You know, you guys have, I know it's a sensitive issue for Americans who are constantly reminding of us of their service to their country, which is great. Nothing wrong with being patriotic. But guys, you're actually one of the few countries that feels that way. People join the military for many reasons. And in my day, many of us joined because it was an opportunity to get a trade. It was a way of getting an apprenticeship for maybe engineering, maybe a mechanic, maybe electrical. But it enabled you to have a job, to be a soldier or an army, sorry, an army personnel, maybe Navy, maybe Air Force. It didn't matter. It was part of the overall approach. But in America, it's a call to arms, like we are the gladiators of the world. Well, that's the way they like to present themselves, getting away from the point. The point is that because they've done their military stint, not all have enjoyed it. Some have enjoyed the comradeship. But now that they come to the Philippines, they have the opportunity. They don't have to put down 10,000 US dollars. Because if you haven't had military, you will be asked to put down 10,000 US dollars. But if you have a military background, no matter where you come from, you also have the opportunity to get the same kind of visa, but for $1,500, which is a lot less than 10,000 hard-earned cash to put in a bank account. Of course, there's fees attached to applying for it as well. The other advantage, of course, is if you and your beautiful wife of many years decide to go separate ways, it doesn't mean you have to go back then to square one, because it gives you that security of knowing that you're still entitled to stay here in the Philippines. But the purpose of this video is more about the highlighting of the fact that somehow people on tourist visas who extend up to 3 years and then do the visa run are somehow taking advantage of the system. Sorry guys, the system wasn't set up by foreigners. It was set up by the Philippines government. It was done for the reasons that they feel the need to do. Nobody knows when they come to another country that they're necessarily going to stay here and make it their permanent residency. No one knows at the start necessarily that if a visa is offered on a basis of being renewed every month or every 2 months, then why wouldn't somebody make use of that if they weren't sure whether they're going to stay here or not? Technically a visitor. Well, I'll give you a reason. Because we live in a country where many, many women are married. They're not living with their husband. Some of them, they don't even know where their husband is. But they cannot get a divorce. Therefore, they are what is called separated, estranged. However you want to put it, they cannot get married. You can't take them overseas and marry them there and circumvent the laws here. So they're caught between the devil and the deep blue sea. And many of you, Americans, Australians, English, Kiwis and Europeans, are living with foreign ladies here in the Philippines. And they're doing so on a visitor's visa, a tourist visa. They're quite happy, they feel comfortable doing that, because that's the only option they have. And I say it is the only option because many of you also are on limited money. You've come here with maybe the intention of sussing out the place initially, and it's turned out to be a long-term situation. It's all very well for the high and mighty of the world who, I've got a 13A visa, you're just on a temporary visa. Well, there's a certain snobbery attached to that. I've got news for you guys. Feel comfortable for as long as you want on your 13A visa. But guys, if you aren't living with your wife that you got your 13A visa with, then I've got news for you guys. You should actually be either on an SRRV. Oh, of course, you'll just drop into the bank and take 10,000 US dollars out, 500,000 pesos, maybe another 150,000 to pay all the fees. Of course you will, won't you? I don't think so. most of you, have come here on a shoestring budget, and you've made use of the generosity offered by the Philippines government for you to do that. They're more than happy. Any government is more than happy to receive an injection in the arm of foreign currency. And yes, you bring that in every month, just like an overseas foreign worker does with their remittances. You know, there's talk about taxing remittances for Americans who are in America. Maybe a good thing, maybe it's not, I don't know. Or will that turn things upside down again? You know, none of us who are not born here have got security. You know, tomorrow morning I can have an SRRV, and tomorrow morning they can rescind it. Just like they can rescind your visa in Australia, they can rescind your citizenship anywhere in the country, everywhere around the world. If a government wants to do it, they will. The only ones they can't are the ones that are born there. You can't be kicked out of a place you were born in. So my advice to everybody, it's fine to have general information about different visas. But I think the scaremongering idea that somehow people are somehow tightening up on visas, sure, it's important that we all try and keep our legal status up to date. Many of us fall behind. Many of us have to put ourselves in a harm's way and put things right too. And there's a genuine will to do that. And every case is different. You can't just sit there saying, oh, that guy's an overstayer. Why is he an overstayer? How has he become that way? Financial, emotional, maybe just a dreadful situation he's found himself in. The point is, if you want to highlight the position for every foreigner, why not? Let's all have a march in the street. Let's all highlight how wonderful we all are, because we're not. Nobody is perfect. Nobody has the right answer to everything. You know, if you could marry the woman that you've chosen to live with after maybe 5, 6, 10 years, wouldn't you? Of course you would. Why would you want to remain on a tourist visa to do that if you could change it economically to a situation where things would be easier? If they were to invent a long-term relationship visa, for instance, great idea, because then at least they would have a little bit more security than having to pay it. Maybe the visa would cost more money, but not to the point where it forces people out. Do they really want the tourists to leave the country? Do they really want the country to be seen as user-friendly for a period of time and then goodbye, we don't want to see you anymore? After you and I maybe have built homes, educated children, not our own, but we've done all that, knowing that we've kept by the regulations, we've renewed our visa, we've enjoyed maybe not waiting 3 years, but going overseas every 2 years maybe for a holiday, coming back, carrying on. There's nothing wrong with that, because you don't know what anybody has in their mind for a future. You know, how do you know that you're not going to, maybe in your later, final years of your life, take her back to your country and maybe set her up in that country so that she has a better opportunity? Of course, she can come back anytime she wants, but without you being there to support her legally, financially, in your own country, she wouldn't be able to do it. So, guys, just think a little bit before we start waffling on about somehow suggesting that being on a visitor's visa, and I call it a visitor's visa because that's really what you're inferring. A tourist visa is a tourist. They called it a tourist visa, but in the Philippines, a tourist visa can last with renewals, up to 3 years. And it's a great opportunity for foreigners to come here and to maybe set up home, and maybe because they have a steady income, but not necessarily a large amount of money behind them, they're able to build a home, build a life here in the Philippines. But they can't come up with 500,000 pesos just like that, just to lose in effect, because they're never going to see it in their lifetime. And the likelihood that it's going to be handed back is probably far and in between. They do say that you can use it as a deposit on a condominium, but who in their right mind would want to pour money into something that is a hole in my pocket? Dear Eliza, dear Eliza. You know how it goes? Not a good investment. Sure, it might go up, but who wants to buy your old, daggy old condominium that when a beautiful new shiny one next door with much better facilities? You know, guys, think before we talk. There's plenty of other things we can talk about, but let's just leave each other alone, in the sense you're no better on an SRRV than a 13A or a tourist visa. I can assure you we can all be shown the door at some point. You just think you're better, and you're not. Bye now.